reassures of government's determination to rescue the Japchi girls safely.
Federal High Court restrains National Assembly from overriding President's veto of Electoral Amendment Bill 2018.
Senate refers screening of MPC nominees to Committee on Banking as House says it will retransmit the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, in our discussion segment, we focus on the permanent voters card, that's the PVC and the 2019 elections, plus the Continental Free Trade Area for Africa. In addition, we shall also be looking at the suspension of the strike by the non-academic staff of universities.
Now, to have a voice that matters as a Nigerian in 2019, one needs a permanent voter's card. That's the PVC. And that's to say that if you don't have the PVC, you cannot vote for your preferred candidates. So the PVC is therefore central to a credible election.
Well, that's right, Rhoda. Now, so long as one remains a Nigerian who has also attained the required voting age of 18, all that is needed is for the individual who doesn't already have a PVC to go to the nearest INEC local government office with a valid means of identification or other document that can prove identity, age, and nationality. And thereafter, you get registered.
Well, the continuous voter registration exercise is ongoing and will be suspended in December 2018, and that's 60 days before the commencement of the election. The Independent National Electoral Commission, that's INEC, has said last year that it was expecting not less than 18 million Nigerians to be registered by 2019.
However, many, as they are making efforts to register in order to get their PVC, there are others who registered quite a long while ago, but are yet to collect their PVC. And this is, of course, giving concern to the Independent National Electoral Commission, which is now considering destroying, according to it, millions of unclaimed PVCs.
Now, let's take, for instance, the resident electoral commissioner in Ondo State, and that's Rufus Akeju. He said that unclaimed PVCs in the state might belong to those who visited the state, that is, during the registration exercise, and decided to register during that period. Now, these people may have abandoned their cards since they've moved to another state, and we're talking about a total of 370,464 PVCs that are yet to be collected in Ondo State alone. And this is also the situation, of course, in many states.
That's right, Rhoda. Indeed, there are estimates as to the total number of uncollected PVCs, but many are wondering why there appears to be no better way for INEC to contact such persons who haven't collected their PVCs. And such concerned individuals are also asking if destroying the cards should be the last resort for INEC. But the Director of Voter Education and Publicity of INEC, Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozi, had said that the number of unclaimed PVCs is put at 8 million.
And that's quite a lot, a lot. That number is indeed huge. But the question some are asking is, how is the electoral body, that's INEC, managing and distributing the PVCs to ensure that only those eligible that got registered, no matter where they are or no matter where they are domiciled, are able to get their cards? And how are they creating the necessary awareness on how people can collect their PVCs? Also, how are eligible voters in Nigeria availing themselves of the continuous voter registration exercise? These are some of the questions we'll be asking our guests this morning on the first leg of our conversation on the program today.
Now, the second topic that we shall be dealing with in our discussion segment is the Continental Free Trade Area for Africa. And it's geared, of course, towards a one African market that will allow local traders access to, as I said, continent-wide markets?
Well, the agreement, which is expected to be signed during the extraordinary summit of the AU on the 21st of this month, comes 6 years after the decision to form the free trade area was implemented in the 18th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Governments of the African Union, and that was held in Ethiopia, and that was in January 2012.
That's right. Now, the primary objective of the Continental Free Trade Area is economic, namely trade in goods and services on the continent that is expected to double intra-African trade and also negotiate with other regions or continents on trade matters.
Well, the question is this, and that is, what is the CFTA, what is it, of what benefit is it to Nigerians' economy? We're also seeking to, find answers on these questions this morning of what benefit is the CFTA to Nigeria's economy. And on that note, we want to say a very good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. I'm Rhoda Anon, and we're reaching you live on Africa's largest television network, and that's the NTA.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined Rhoda in also welcoming you to the program. Now, we shall also be talking about the just suspended strike by the non-academic staff unions of universities.
Yeah.
They have been on strike for a little over 3 months now.
3 months.
In fact, since
December.
early December. It seemed to have been a forgotten strike, by the way, until just about 48 hours or so ago when it was called off. So we shall be taking a look at that. So it's a crowded agenda for us in our conversation segment, but we also have our regular companion segments, and these include newspaper review, business, and of course, if we have the time, we also take sports. We saw Chelsea hammered last night by the Catalan Giants. In the meantime, let's join our colleague, Miriam Akpata, for the morning news. Hi, Miriam.
Yeah, good morning, Rhoda and Kingsley. Here is the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has visited the Dapchi community in Yobe State in furtherance of his strategic engagement with those that matter as genuine efforts are intensified towards rescuing the abducted schoolgirls. President Buhari reassured parents, Nigerians and the international community that the federal government will do everything within its power towards ensuring that the abducted schoolgirls from Dapchi are brought back safely. Addressing community, religious and political leaders in Damaturu, the president was emphatic that as government unravels the circumstances surrounding the incident, any person, group or agency found to have been negligent or culpable in the dastardly act will be appropriately dealt with.
The last girl, whether from Chibok or Dapchi, is released. The girls, like all our students, must enjoy unhindered freedom and pursue their legitimate aspirations. The Dapchi and Chibok students are our girls and must enjoy our protection. They must live to achieve their individual ambitions to be great women of tomorrow. It is our duty to protect them. We are determined to restore peace to all parts of the country.
The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has restrained the National Assembly from taking any step to override the president's veto pending the determination of a suit before it. The restraining order was given by Justice Muhammad after hearing a motion filed by a court party of Nigeria.
Process preservative order is made so that every party will respect the institution of the judiciary. By extension, every party will respect also the Constitution.
The court has held in its view that it is only fair and the interest of justice for the parties, especially the National Assembly, to tarry a while.
The House of Representatives says it will retransmit the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which President Muhammadu Buhari declined assent. The Chairman, House Committee on Media and Publicity, Representative Abdulrazak Namdaz, disclosed this while briefing National Assembly correspondent on the status of bills before the House.
In view of this, we will regazette the Electoral Act itself and expunge the areas that we are in agreement with the president. And in line with the Constitution, we will expunge those areas and then bring back for debate and then follow the procedure of first reading, second reading. We will pass it and retransmit it to the president for assent.
In view of the important role played by the Central Bank of Nigeria in the growth and development of the economy, the Senate has, contrary to its earlier position of declining to screen, referred to the Committee on Banking, Insurance and Other Financial Institutions an executive communication from President Muhammadu Buhari. The President's request is for confirmation of the nomination of individuals as members of the Monetary Policy Committee (MPC) of the CBN and confirmation of the nominations of 2 persons for the appointment as Deputy Governor of CBN.
Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Nigeria be referred to the appropriate committee for further legislative action.
I rise to second the motion as moved by the leader, even as we had highlighted the significance of this exercise.
Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Rhoda and Kingsley after this break.
Now it's time for us to take a look at some business stories, with Nigeria's national debt burden growing to 21.7 trillion naira as at the end of December 2017, plus more trouble for cryptocurrency investors. Our correspondent Vivian Idepefo has details of the stories.
Thank you for joining us on this segment. We start with the latest information from the Debt Management Office, which says Nigeria's total national debt grew to 21.7 trillion naira at the end of December 2017. It was 17.36 trillion naira at the end of 2016. The national debt mix is about 30% foreign and 70% local after a $2.5 billion Eurobond sale in February. The Debt Management Office on Wednesday said Eurobond sales last year boosted foreign reserves by $4.8 billion in addition to that of February. And Nigeria's Consumer Price Index CPI increased by 14.33% year-on-year in February. Latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics shows that the Consumer Price Index, which measures the rate of inflation, dropped for the 13th consecutive time since January 2017. This represents a downward trend of 0.8% points than the rate recorded in January 2018. And cryptocurrency lovers may be in for a slow market as Bitcoin prices tumbled more than 5% Wednesday, shortly after internet giant Google announced that it will ban cryptocurrency advertising on its platform. The Google crypto ban follows a similar ban by Facebook 3 months ago. For the latest on the Nigerian capital markets, here's a pictorial summary. And on that note, we conclude business news for now. Thanks for being there.
Thank you very much, Vivian, there for the newspaper, for the business news. Now time for us to take a look at our newspaper review.
Baya Tebe is right here with us in the studios. Baya, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Baya.
Good morning. Morning, Rhoda. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, Kingsley, let's begin. We have a few papers here this morning, but all the papers that we have, the headlines run in the same story, and that's Let's start with the blueprint. The blueprint, the lead story says, Court to National Assembly, Stop Election Sequence Bill. And with two rivals there, controversy political, says Senate, bill no longer tenable, and that's to Abdullahi Adamu. And reps move to override Buhari's veto, and that's on page 6 of the blueprint, and that's the lead story. Let's just quickly go to at the bottom of the paper, still talking about the Senate there. It's just below the picture story. It says Senate summons NSA, AGF over Kogi militias and headsmen invade Dekina local government area, kills 7. And at the foot of the paper, it's there. Will negotiate Dapchi schoolgirls' unconditional release, says Buhari. Will negotiate Dapchi schoolgirls' unconditional release. That's to President Buhari. It's on page 7 of the blueprint.
Now, the story coming out of the courts is the same for the Daily Independent and the Authority as they are laid. That's to say, the Electoral Amendment Bill 2018. So you find those stories there, as I said, on the front pages of the Authority and the Daily Independent. They are lead story. But let's go above the nameplate of the Daily Independent newspaper to take other headlines. It says Nigeria's debt hits 21.7 trillion. Inflation drops to 14.33%. That story is there. And then other headlines there on the front page of the Daily Independent. Immigration loses 28 billion naira outsourcing passports and others, with a rider laments fake marriages in Nigeria. And also there, AEPB, that's Abuja Environmental Protection Board, police and soldiers and road safety clash in Abuja. And Dapchi girls, that's the kicker. My response better than Jonathan's. That's attributed to President Buhari, with 2 riders there. Meets presidents of abducted schoolgirls, assures on rescue, and accuses evil elements of plot to score political points. That story is in greater detail on page 5 of the Independent. Now you have, as I said, other similar stories on the front page of the Authority newspaper. Now just above the nameplate of the Authority newspaper, you have this other headline that is different. It says, Dasuki Gate. That's the kicker. Judge blasts EFCC, withdraws from case. And then still on the front page there, just beside the photograph on the front page of the Authority newspaper, you have that headline there. That's on the right-hand side column. It says, Presidency ignores NLC to sign African free trade deal. That story is on page 5. There are also stories there on terrorists sacking communities in Delta, Kogi, and Plateau. Together, of course, with the inflation drop to 14.33% in February, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Bio.
Yeah, thank you. I'm appalled. What is fake marriage? You either are married or you are not. There could be a cohabitation. These days, you hear also of fake news. Yeah. News is information that is factual, true, and in fact, and in substance. So if it is not true, it's false. It's not news. It's falsity. Everything we tend to say there's a fake thing, and I don't know. A fake is an imitation.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's right. That's what it is. If marriage is contrived, then of course it's not a marriage properly called.
So
yes.
It's not a marriage, so there's no fake marriage. Anyway, let's go on.
No, but Bio,
let's start at the court.
Bio, just before you come, the details are more worrisome.
Yes.
I mean, the chief immigration officer of the country, that's the head of the Immigration Controller General, is saying that some foreign men are coming into Nigeria on the tourist visas and then arranging marriages with Nigerian women, and then that then entitles them to work permits. And then the work permit is also omnibus. In other words, it's extensive to the extent that you are not restricted as to what jobs you can do. And these are jobs that Nigerians ordinarily are qualified to do. And some of those marriages, of course, pack up as soon as the individual has other opportunities. Yeah, so.
Well, let's start with the Dapchi. President was in Dapchi, and he assured that the soldiers, the police, and all security agencies will do everything to ensure that the girls are returned alive. I was particularly enamored by the comment of one of the mothers. And she says, we accept the adoption as the will of God. It is a test of faith, and we also have faith that the president will rescue and bring our daughters back to us alive. And the parents also showed placards, and they said, we want you to rescue our daughters. We believe in our daughters, and they are our future hope. And these were part of the challenges, I'm sure, that the president's delegation that was composed of 4 ministers and the former governor and senator from Yobe, as well as Governor Beidan, saw at Yobe. And the courts now, the Federal High Court in Abuja has asked the National Assembly to maintain a status quo bellum until 23rd of March, for which they will hear a case of interlocutory injunction restraining the National Assembly from continuing with the actions on the amendment on Electoral Act 2010. However, while that was going on, the spokesperson for the House of Representatives, Abdulrazak Namdar, has told the world that they agree with the president on 2 of the reasons he gave for withholding her accent, particularly on Section 138 and Section 152. However, on the main one that talks about the days of election, they will maintain what they have proposed, and he says they are going to get their proposal gazetted and resent to Mr. President for his
Bayo, maybe just recap again for the benefit of our viewers, because you recall yesterday we discussed the president's reasons for withholding his accent. Those took 2 of the provisions. One relates to whether or not the president expressed concern that there was apparently legislative overreach by the National Assembly.
Yes.
It purported to legislate on the conduct of local government elections.
That's Section 152.
Yeah. And then the other one, crucially, they say the reasons, that the National Assembly in the bill which the president vetoed tended also to have deleted 2 of the critical grounds upon which a candidate in an election can challenge the validity of that election.
Right. So the House of Rep agrees with those reasons, and but they will go ahead with the other part. Meanwhile, they will now have to wait until the court determines the outcome of that issue.
Yeah, Bayo, I'm just wondering, there are other stories, I don't know, Rhoda, you have other stories?
Well, on the blueprint, they're just below the nameplate says health workers threaten nationwide strike. Okay. Health workers threaten nationwide strike, and that's basically it.
Well, there's a counterpoint to that by NASU, SANU, and NATS.
Yes.
They have now called off their 3-month-old strike, and they are also saying that they apologize to parents and students for the agony they had to go through, but they are happy now that federal government has made commitments. And they also added that they too were victims because they are parents. And they have students
that's actually, coincidentally, it's an item that we're taking this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. It's an item we're taking. We're taking on.
All right, yeah. Rhoda, let's, we will not be able to upload these ones on the screen right away, but there are some stories inside the Daily Independent I would like to draw attention to. Page 82, for instance, there's a headline. Daily Independent, page 82. As I said, we cannot upload this on the screen right away. It says, modular refineries overrated, not solution to fuel scarcity. This is attributed to Minister of State for Petroleum, Ibe Kachuku. Of course, part of what he said is that he told State House reporters shortly after the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday that at best, modular refineries can only deliver an average of 2,000 or 5,000, or according to him, 10,000 liters per refinery. And that what it would do in the main would be to address the menace of crude oil refinery rampant in the Niger Delta while also serving the environment.
Yes, actually the experts say that modular refinery can only produce and give you petrol, but it will be a waste of crude oil for other byproducts that you can come from conventional refineries. So it is not an efficient way of refining. It's because of our race to meet the demand for petrol, which is in short supply, that modular refinery is becoming a very popular thing.
Indeed, Bayo, what you just said now, we had a guest a couple of weeks ago when we were discussing issues arising when Nigeria hosted the summit, the first such summit of African petroleum producers. Yeah. He joined us from our Lagos Network studios. He was a former refinery manager of Warri Refinery. And he chuckled when the question was put to him as to what the impact might be with the coming on stream of modular refineries. And he said that won't be the answer, precisely what you are pointing out now. There's another story, Rhoda. This one again also from the inside page of the Daily Independent. And it's on page A6. It concerns sports. It says, reps summon sports minister and AFN. AFN stands for Athletics Federation of Nigeria officials over alleged $150,000 theft. That story is on page A6. Then there's another story. Bayo, we are almost going to discuss this. a couple of days ago, but you have details now coming from page 813 of the Daily Independent newspaper. And the headline is Curse on Human Traffickers and Others by Benin Monarch Yielding Results. It says Curse on Human Traffickers and Others by Benin Monarch Yielding Positive Results.
Well, there was a meeting at the palace of traditional chiefs, herbalists, and also the native doctors, and the Omonova Nedo Okuapolopolo nullified all causes that have been the stranglehold on people who have been trafficked, and they were fear about confessing. And with that nullification, it is expected that many of these masterminds of the victims will now will be exposed. It's an opportunity to whistleblow on those who were indulging in this human trafficking. And
you know, that's actually really the stronghold that they have on these girls.
Yes.
You know. Well, Bayo, thank you.
Yeah, that's the most that we can take. There's another story just before we sign off.
That will be for another day.
Yeah, that will be another day, not for discussion. You recall we read the story of a mentally deranged fellow who stormed the school in Ogun State and killed two of the pupils aged 4. There's a report that he has been arrested now by the Ogun State Police Command. That arrest took place yesterday. Bayo Atoyebe, thanks a lot for being around.
Thank you very much.
See you tomorrow, Friday. All right, it's still Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now.
All right, you're welcome back. And if you've just joined us, it's Good Morning Nigeria. And we're on now to our conversation segments. We'll be taking on 3 issues this morning. Namely, first of all, we're looking at the permanent voters card in the 2019 election. We're looking at also the Continental Free Trade Area and the SANU, the just suspended SANU strike. But first, we'll begin with the permanent voters card and the 2019 election. And to give us a better understanding, first of all, our correspondent Timothy Yusuf has put together this background report, and that will set the stage for our first discussion this morning.
The use of the permanent voter card is an important and critical instrument for electing political office holders. This is to say that in democratic societies around the world, the importance of permanent voter card cannot be overemphasized in any election. Findings, however, showed that many Nigerians of voting age take the utility of PVC in the election process for granted, on one hand, while on the other hand, the authority saddled with the responsibility of issuing PVC to citizens is, however, blamed for most lapses recorded at times. Therefore, the perceived frustration and disappointment expressed by many Nigerians, especially ahead of the 2019 general election. Most issues raised include difficulties in the collection of PVC, underage and double registration, to non-Nigerians also obtaining PVC as against the law. In all of these complaints, the Independent National Electoral Commission say it will undertake a thorough cleanup of the existing voter register before the 2019 general elections, as it is aware of the challenges faced by citizens, but that no eligible registrant will be left out. Meanwhile, INEC has so far removed from the voter register the names of 299 aliens who registered on the false pretense that they were Nigerians. Ahead of the 2019 general elections, when the use of permanent voter card PVC by the Nigeria's voting population will be golden, there is an interesting and revealing statistics about Nigerians' attitude towards their political responsibility. With a population of 180 million people, only 68.8 million registered and were eligible to vote in the 2015 general election. This means that only 38% of the country's population registered with the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, as eligible voters. This percentage is relatively small, although in comparison to the 61% of its population who are eligible to register as voters according to the National Population Commission, NPC, and the National Bureau of Statistics. This low percentage suggests a state of low interest by many Nigerians in the country's politics, particularly in an election.
We wish to reassure all those who registered in 2017 that their permanent voter cards, the PVCs, will be available for collection in the first week of May 2018. That is in the next 2 months. For those who register in 2018, their PVCs will be available for collection before the 2019 general elections.
Is ownership of PVCs sufficient in a democracy like Nigeria? What is the rationale behind INEC's proposal to destroy about 8 million PVCs? Join us for answers on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. Now we have three guests with us here in the studios to discuss this issue. First, we'd like to welcome Mr. Oluwole Osaze-Ozie. He's Director, Voter Education and Publicity of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Mr. Osaze-Ozie, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right. Also here with us is Mr. Ezenwa Wango. He's of the Partners for Electoral Reforms. Mr. Wango, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you. Okay.
And also joining us here in the studio is Professor Dong Pam Shak. He is a political scientist of the Department of the University of Jos. Prof, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's begin with the INEC Director of Voter Education and Publicity. Fill us in on the latest with regard to the continuous voter registration exercise and collection of PVCs.
Okay, thank you. The PVC and registration is done on a quarterly basis. We will, on the 26th of March, suspend the registration so that we can do the display of the provisional register of voters, that those who have been captured in the first quarter of this year. For a couple of days, we'll display, as the law provides, for about 5-6 days, the list, so that if there are any objections, if there are any corrections to be made, such corrections will be made. And if there are any objections because there are some ineligible people on the register, there's opportunity of the public to raise those objections. We'll investigate, and if found to be correct, we'll remove them from the register. But up till that point, we are going on and carrying on with the registration and also the transfers and also the replacement of lost cards. So far, over 2 million Nigerians have taken advantage of this communal voter registration that we have introduced last year. About 2.371 million Nigerians have taken advantage of that. Also, many people have, over 230-something thousand have come for the replacement of their lost or damaged cards, because that's another aspect of the communal voter registration that we are doing. Also, the bulk of the uncollected cards are still there. We've had quite a number of people come to pick it up, but quite a sizable bulk is still in our offices and registration centers yet to be collected.
Well, just elaborate further on the impending suspension, temporary suspension, to enable you display the, shall we say, provisional registration information. Where will the display take place? Because the continuous voter registration was supposed to take place at the local government headquarters or someplace. So where will the display take place, and from when to when? Will it be available? Is it going to be pasted, on some notice board or otherwise?
Yes, registration is ongoing in all the INEC local government offices, area council offices for Abuja, and also registration centers, which have been moving around. So it will take place at the registration points. The display will take place at all registration points and the INEC local government offices on a notice board, so that giving access to members of the public to raise objections or correct whatever data has been wrongly entered. And it will be for about 5 days, commencing on the 26th of March, 2018.
So you're saying now that if it is displayed within the period that you have stated now, people should go there and see if their names are there or if there are irregularities in the registers. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct. If you want to correct any data, you've captured data for those who have been captured during this exercise. So if, for example, the sex might be wrongly misplaced, the name might be incorrectly spelled, whatever personal data that you have that you feel has to be corrected or wrongly captured, then that's the opportunity to raise objection before we print the permanent register and permanent voter's card. But also, if there are ineligible people, for whatever reasons, if they are ineligible, they ought not to be in the register, that's another opportunity for people to look at it and raise an objection to anybody's entry in that register who ought not to be there. Maybe the person has registered before, is underage, or is not a Nigerian citizen. That is the other opportunity for the public to raise objections to it.
Well, I was going to ask you also too, when is the deadline for registering and collection of PVCs before the election? When is the deadline?
Well, we'll make that known to the public. Somewhere along the line, we have to get a cut-off point, because we must certify that register and publish same, and also give same to the registered political parties well before the election. So a date to be announced, the commission will convey that cut-off date to the public.
There was a clip in our background report just now showing the chairman of your commission indicating that persons who registered in 2017 would be able to collect theirs sometime later this year, sometime in next in May or thereabout, and then those in 2018, will get it subsequently. Can we have a clear sense, perhaps, of the timetable? Because you are saying now that for the first quarter of 2018, there will be a temporary halt to registration in order to clean up the provisional register and the provisional data there. So for those who register, who would go to the INEC office, say, by the 15th of March, which is today, and after all the objections have been taken into consideration, when can they expect their PVCs? And then for those who would then register subsequently, say by the month of July or August, when can they expect their PVCs?
Well, there's no hard and fast rule about that. There will be batching. We do print PVCs in batches. The display is to fulfill the conditions stipulated in the law. We cannot go ahead to print those cards until we have displayed for claims and for objections. What I can assure is that all those who are registered within the time frame will get their permanent voters cards before the elections. So, but the exact times will be rolled out subsequently. But all those who are registered now, who register subsequently, will get the opportunity of picking up their cards probably before the end of the year.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Sazeuzi, Director of Voter Education of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Let's bring in Izinwa Wagu for your first shot right now. What is your assessment so far of the registration process or the collection process? What has been your assessment?
Thank you. The sense will be that for the first time, we're not having an event. We're having a process. We said we need to have continuous voter registration exercise. And if you remember, it used to be episodic. Okay, 3 weeks window. If you didn't, so you go after 3 weeks, you don't have opportunity again until after the election. So you have INEC now opening the window to do what it ought to do, which is to have this exercise to be continuous. What does that mean? What it means is that you need more materials, you need more personnel. Do we have all of that? Do we have all the materials that are required to have a continuous voter registration in its true sense? So if we don't, it means that there are challenges. So those challenges play out at the centers. What is that? Not inadequate machines. And remember, INEC, I think they are not using ad hoc staff. They are deploying their own staff. So that means that you are not likely going to have enough personnel to deal with the upsurge of people who may have turned 18 and those who didn't register in the previous. So my quick sense is always that those challenges are there. All we've continued to do is to ask citizens who are qualified at this time. If you've turned 18, there's a project we call Power of 18. If you've turned 18, you should take advantage of this opportunity. If you didn't register before, you can also take advantage. And then as we go on, you see that the pressure continues to lessen in terms of, oh, I went there, I didn't get opportunity. Because it is a continuous voter registration, if you go today, you didn't have the opportunity, you can go the next time. That's my sense of it.
All right, thanks a lot, Ezenwa. Let's bring in Professor Pamshah. Professor Pamshah, what's your take on the ongoing exercise? And in particular, are we having issues in terms of reports with the data capturing machines? Because in previous exercises, certain private individuals were said to have turned their premises into registration centers.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that there is an improvement, at least from the events of 2015. Now we're having continuous voter registration. Then, like Wagu said, it was an event. But my thinking is that we are eventually turning this again into an event, because you have dates, you have periods, you have times, for people to go and register. I would love that probably in the future. If you want to register, just walk straight into the INEC office, wherever it is designated to take place, to just register, rather than having these dates. But I'm quite happy that at least we have this movement from the previous exercise of having events. My big problem with 2015, because I will need to go back to 2015 because we need to understand where we're coming from. In 2015, the problem was the production and also the distribution of PVCs. That created a lot of problems, leading to people not even voting. And I am sure up to now, I know people who said they registered and never got PVCs and therefore never participated in the electoral process in 2015. And I'm happy that we're being assured that something is going to happen shortly before 2019. Now, the major problem that we have today, and I think which was also in 2015, was points of registration. Where do you go to? Nigerians and villagers are known to go to the polling units, to register. Now they're being asked, to go to further points, from their locations. That created a lot of problems, and I think it's still creating a problem today. My grandmom, would have to go to the ward headquarters, and she would have to take a bike or take a taxi. That would create a problem, mostly for people who live in remote places. And I have listened to INEC's explanation, over time, that probably finance is one of the problems, to replicate what we used to know, having people at various registration points. And like you said, since they're now using their staff, they're not using ad hoc staff, that will be a problem. But I think we need to invest more time, to think about how we can perfect this situation. Do we need, to talk about finance when we're not actually getting the process right, when people have difficulties in accessing registration centers? So I think INEC has to invest some time to think more creatively on how to handle this. There are problems with centers right now. I listened to your reports or some other centers report about fake registration centers, created in some states of the Federation. And I was saying, what? Where is INEC? Is INEC aware of this? Should this be the correct approach? So we need to request INEC to put more attention and have more determined efforts, to make sure that the process doesn't fail. Because if you create, centers like that, fake centers, I'm sure your cleaning, of the register of 299 aliens and other people who are not expected to be on the register will continue to be replicated. So the major problem that I think right now we're facing with our process is the people accessing registration points, and the story is about illegal centers, being created for this purpose. I've not heard much of the data capturing machine, but the usual problem, has always been there. It's either it's not working well, or it's basically not working well for the achievement, of the purpose. So
right,
yes, these are the basic problems that we face now.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Ndong Pamsha. We will now take a vox pop that our correspondent went on the streets to actually get the views of people on the continuous voter registration exercise. Let's have a listen.
There's one time they told us that we should go and register it. When we got there, we didn't meet them. So that is why I decided just to leave it, unless they just added the people that went to go and register it before I should go and register it. That is the problem.
I have registered it right from the previous administration, and I've been voting.
The last time I registered at Zuba, so but they haven't given me my original voter's card.
It was not easy. It was not easy at all. I had to spend 2 days before getting because of the queue. I went to different locations about 4 or 5 times before I could get back to my state in order to get it, because I knew it was very necessary. So I had to try my best to get it.
As a matter of fact, I don't know where and how to go about it. As a real Nigerian, I would have loved to have my PVC.
When I did mine, it wasn't stressful like that. So I have mine here, it's here with me.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I've not registered, but I tried to register, but the protocol being given is so much.
I don't have problem. I'm with it. As I'm moving around, I'm with it. That is it.
Those are the views rather of a cross-section of Nigerians taken by our correspondent. Mr. Sajauzi, first let's get your reaction to some of the points that they have raised, in addition of course to the comments made by the other two guests here in the studios. Challenges or difficulties with registering doesn't appear to be as seamless as envisaged.
Well, thank you. I'm happy you did your vox pop. You see that it's been a mixed bag. Quite a number of people have just gone in and registered and gone away, while others have had challenges. And part of the challenge is that information, I guess. One of your respondents said something about he didn't know where to go. Or he was told that he had to go to this place and he didn't see them there. Now, let's get one thing clear. We started this exercise in April last year, April 2017. And as Professor said, it was just that you walked into an INEC office and get registered. It's as easy as that. It was as easy as that. In some local government offices, there was awareness, there was a large crowd. In others, it was a couple of minutes exercise. So it was, as I said earlier, a mixed bag, really. The whole idea is that people can walk into an office, once they turn 18, or if they had not registered before, walk into the local government office of the commission and get registered. But after the first quarter, we had consultations with our stakeholders, and complaints were received that, look, in some areas, local government offices were quite a distance from certain communities and villages, and that it's a bit unfair and inequitable to expect people to travel long distances, sometimes a couple of hours on the road or by the sea or whatever, to get to their local government headquarters. Having listened to this, we responded and went back to the drawing board and said, what can we do? We still don't have resources to establish registration centers in every polling unit, as used to happen in the past, not in 2015 though, in the distant past. So we said, okay, fine. We can still spare some staff and still get some equipment and establish more centers, which we did. Again, at the end of every quarter, we do a review, and when we did that, we now said permanent centers. But people came back and said it's unfair and still inequitable to have centers that are still distance away. So based on the complaints, based on consultations, we now said, okay, we'll have roving centers. So when we register in a particular community for a couple of days or a week, we now move on to another community, whereas registration continues in a local government office. But they are moving centers based on the desire and the request from communities, and we now go around communities so that in a more equitable manner, these centers are quite close to the people. As to the challenges of the machines, yes, some are not as fast or as efficient as they should be. Quite a number of those machines were purchased in 2010, were used in 2010. And I thought Nigerians would be quite pleased that machines that were bought 8 years ago are still being used. Hardly any one of us has the laptop or the phone that we had 8 years ago and we're still using them. Definitely, it will not be as efficient, will not be as fast as it was. Within resources, we've purchased new machines and those have been deployed to the field, especially the additional centers and centers of large populations. I think because of the novelty, we've done it for almost a year now. I think that in due course, it'll be as easy as walking into an office and within a couple of minutes getting registered, especially when we clear the backlog of those who have not been able to register.
What reports are you getting from your state offices? Because here we can see what's happening here in the Federal Capital Territory. I know there are challenges in some registration centers in heavily populated locations, such as Lagos, for instance. But there are other states. What are you getting? Is it uniform in terms of what's happening, or there are differences? Are there smooth operations in some of the places?
No, it's not uniform. Quite a number of very smooth operations, little challenges, but others complain of large crowds. I think quite a number of people who are going to register should not actually be registering again, because they either have their permanent voters card or should be doing transfers or replacement of cards. They're interviewed, and quite a number of them should just go to the desk which deals with the distribution and collection of cards. Some people say they don't want to go through the hassle of going to pick up their cards, and they do fresh registration, which is a criminal offense, rather than just apply for transfer. And procedure for transfer is quite easy. You just fill a form, or they fill a form for you if you're not literate, and you attach a photocopy of your permanent voter's card.
I was going to ask you, how would you detect if someone is going to register, you know, twice? Because if I've lost mine and I don't want to go through the process, probably I registered in Lagos and I don't want to go through the process, and I walk to any of the registration centers here in Abuja, how would they be able to detect that, okay, I've registered before?
Well, the first thing they do is to interview each registrant and say, look, have you registered before? When last did you register? If you've never registered, then they shall proceed to register you. But after interrogation, they now know, okay, you go to the transfer desk. And a lot of transfer desks are not as busy as the registration desk. The collection desk is almost idle, but very few people are coming to collect. So the first point of call is that officer who will interview you, first of all, to ascertain whether it's a transfer, it's a replacement, or it's a fresh registration. If it's a fresh registration, then they shall proceed with capturing your data. And but to capture those who have registered more than once, we have to run AFIS. So that is the back end. We cannot do so at that point of registration. And we have to do AFIS so that we ascertain from our database whether you have previously been registered.
All right, so thank you very much. Ezewan Nwagu, would like you to take off from there. We're having all of this now. If it is left on the face of it, or in the first instance, to a registration officer to interview a potential registrant, whether he or she had previously registered, and if the potential registrant, you know, decides to dissemble, then how do you ensure the integrity of the voters register, so that if we are quoting figures, assuming it is for the purpose of this question, say 80 million Nigerians have registered, how many of them are double registrants? How do we clean up the register to be sure that there are no instances of double registration, plus the latest menace of underage underage voters being registered?
My sense of our election environment is that is a contest of ill-gotten advantage. What do I mean by that? Communities conspire, and you know I've said this severally. Communities collude, not conspire, collude with electoral officials and security agents based on the lie that your voting strength has something to do with the amenities that come to your community. So within the window that's open for voter registration, you see communities coming together to say, look, how do we up this, our numbers, so that, you know, amenities can be attracted to our... We need to bust that first and say, look, whether it is underage voting or adult padding of the register, you have a register that can't reflect in real terms, you know, what it should be. You don't have a clean register. But now there are opportunities. If you take away that collusion, the window for objections that has been opened, this register will be pasted at different polling units. But if communities have agreed that is how they want it, nobody's going to go. Nobody's going to object to anything. They let it be. They shout underage voting somewhere, but retain the advantage that they have taken to up their own number in their own places. So the bulk of the challenge falls on INEC. The ability to really run this office, this back end. How much you are going to succeed with that is left to conjecture. But the truth of the matter is that if INEC is able to do that, it would at least be able to take away substantially people who shouldn't be in the register. But what we need to deal with, and which the conversation doesn't always want to go to, is how do we break the grip of politically exposed persons within communities who drive these processes in their own communities. In many places, community development associations are contributing money for voter registration, and is ongoing. So what is that contribution for? What is the reason to contribute money? It is to compromise electoral officials, security agents, and all of that, to ensure. There are also hard to reach places, you know, in many of the topography in many of the places, in rivers, Cross River, Delta, Ondo, Lagos, all of those hard to reach places. Do electoral officials tell their story? Do you understand? So we need to come clearly as a people and say, look, we want a clean, authentic register, so that when we vote people, when people get into government, they can have a sense that truly that the people, because if you've observed the elections, you see that in many places you have 500 people in a register, and then 100 people come out, and then immediately after voting, people gather and say, so what are we going to do with the remaining
400?
With the remaining 400, and everybody agrees and says, okay, the dominant party in this our area is so and so. This person, everybody agrees. So it's what the conversation for me is that we need to have a stakeholder mindset that deals with the challenges that we have with our process.
All right. Wango, thank you very much. Let's bring it again, Professor Pamsha. Professor Pamsha, there's no doubt about it that what Nigeria is going through at the moment on the auspices of INEC is one of the most crucial phases in election. If you cannot get your voters registered right, then of course you open up the avenues for all kinds of manipulations and malfeasance in the electoral process. What is it that we need to get right at this time to purge the register, not just of dead persons, but double registrants and underage persons, or indeed persons who are not qualified in the first instance to be on the register? What is required, quite aside from what everyone has said, and then what the INEC director also indicated?
Yeah, you're right. If you have a process that has big problems, it's going to affect the quality, of elections. And I think that what we need to do basically is to insist that INEC, insist that the right thing is done. One, the quality and the number of officials that would usually play such roles, should be looked at very carefully. So if you don't punish offenders who are members, of INEC, who indulges in the kind of practices which are being described here, then we would continue to have problems like that. Secondly, I think we need a more important enlightenment program, of communities. That has to be done. Yes, we know that elections would usually produce people who would eventually deliver services, but we need people who come up of the process who are also very clean. Because if you produce a person who has rigged elections, then of course you're going to tell the outcome at the end of the day. So I think that these two broad strategies, should be used from INEC and also the community.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Dong Pam Shak. But very quickly, let's take a look at the tweets that we have. Our viewers are sending in their tweets via our Twitter handle at NTAGMN. This first one is from Dele Jackson Solomon. He says, NTAGMN, please ask your guests what INEC is going to do about underage voters who have registered with INEC. Furthermore, we implore INEC to do what it can to ensure the distribution of PVCs by the first week of May. Many Nigerians do not want to hear or listen to to avoidable complaints.
Amagbola Babs has this tweet. Now, voter sensitization is still relatively low in the hinterland. Many Nigerians at the grassroots are still without their PVCs. Those who have attained the voting age also don't know how to go about registration.
Abdul Musa tweeted, said there's also the need to increase the number of registration points so that eligible persons can easily access them with ease. It is presently many people cannot locate the registration points closer to their residence. INEC has done little in terms of public enlightenment. There should be a deliberate enlightenment campaign to sensitize Nigerians on the need to register and collect their PVCs on time to enable them exercise their civic responsibilities.
We have this from Sonny Michael Amakoji. It says, INEC lamenting the millions of voter cards are still in their offices to be collected due to reasons not clearly defined. Perhaps not until we link our PVC with BVN plus national ID card as it is done in advanced nations, we'll just be joking with our institutional framework.
And this one is from Festus Akimboyo. It says, INEC's method of individual voter registration in which people have to be physically present to register for 2019 elections risk disenfranchising millions of voters. Time for online registration.
Husseini Danjuma poses a question. He says, my son will be 18 years on the 5th of February 2019. Do I allow him to register? It's not the one whether you allow him or not. Will INEC register
him at that time?
All right, but that question, Osaze will answer that. But let's take the others.
Mike Anyaku Twitter said, no PVC, no votes. This should be the slogan for 2019 election. Political parties should help in sensitizing the populace on the importance of PVC.
Law Alpha C has this tweet. The federal government should push more funds to INEC to enable it decongest the registration of eligible voters from the local council headquarters to the wards.
This one is from Stephen Kefers. He said, I'm from southern Kaduna and must confess that the ongoing continuous voter registration is not going very effectively in my zone due to lack of adequate centers, equipment and personnel. As it stands, thousands will be disenfranchised. At a particular center, we have to provide a small generator to power the computer used by the INEC personnel.
And Ishak Ajibade tweets, I must be among those who have not collected their PVCs, not because of anything, but INEC fails to allow us to collect it anywhere, irrespective of where we registered. And
finally, Dele Jack Solomon Twitter says, is INEC thinking about using blockchain tracking and tallying technology to monitor the 2019 election? If not, let them do this. This is because, according to ECOWAS Observer Mission, noted that the Sierra Leonean election was largely peaceful, free and fair because of this technology.
All right, those are the tweets that we have. Very briefly, Mr. Osaze, respond to that tweet. I was asking a question. It says his son will be 18 years on the 5th of February 2019, just a couple of weeks before voting starts. Say, can he register?
Well, unfortunately, he cannot register before he turns 18. If the registration is still open at that time, then he can register, but it's not likely to be open because 60 days to the election, or 30 days to the election, we must certify the register and hand over, publish the same, hand over to the political parties as well. And we cannot allow any more persons into that register once that has been done, because that's the register we will use for 2019. In subsequent elections, he'll be able to register.
That's right. In subsequent general elections, depending on where the child is, if he's in a state where you have elections, governorship elections taking place in between general elections, or even in local government elections, the child will be able to participate.
All right. It's on that note we want to say thank you. Oluwole Osaze, Director of Voter Education and Publicity, Independent National Electoral Commission. Thank you for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
And also Eze Wagu, Director, Partner for Electoral Reforms. It's always a pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria. And Professor Dong Pamshak, Political Science Department of the University of Jos. Thank you very much for joining us on this discussion.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll take a break now, and we still have 2 items for discussion. So stay with us. Welcome back. We just ended our first discussion, and that was on the permanent voter, the continuous voter registration and the 2019 election. Now we're taking a look at the Continental Free Trade Area. We'll take this background report put together by Timothy Yusuf, and when we come back, we'll introduce our guest.
The 18th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union, held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in January 2012, adopted a decision to establish a Continental Free Trade Area CFTA by an indicative date of 2017. The summit also endorsed the Action Plan on Boosting Intra-Africa Trade, BIAT, which identified 7 clusters. They include trade policy, trade facilitation, productive capacity, trade-related infrastructure, trade finance, trade information, and factor market integration. Therefore, the CFTA is expected to bring together 54 African countries with a combined population of more than 1 billion people and a combined gross domestic product of more than $3.4 trillion. The objectives are to, among others, create a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business, persons and investments, with a view to paving the way for accelerating the establishment of the Continental Customs Union and the African Customs Union. As the argument for and against the Continental Free Trade Area CFTA rages among Nigerians, what are the benefits and consequences of signing the agreement, as President Muhammadu Buhari appears set to join other African leaders to sign the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement in Kigali, Rwanda capital, on the 21st of this month.
And there are still a number of barriers, as our people go out to trade in other African countries and to invest in other African countries. And we believe that this will be a win for not just Nigeria, but for the other African countries, and lift a lot of our people out of poverty.
These and other questions will engage our guests shortly.
Let's now welcome 2 guests with us here in the studios. First, we'd like to welcome Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe. He's Director General and Chief Negotiator of the Nigeria Office for Trade Negotiations, and is also Chair of the Negotiating Forum for the Continental Free Trade Area. Ambassador Osakwe, pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kingsley.
And also here with us in the studios is Mr. Ken Ukoha. He's National President, National Association of Nigerian Traders. Mr. Ukoha, delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kingsley.
All right, let's begin with Ambassador Osakwe. You listened to the background report by our correspondent, Timothy Yusuf. Give us a sense of the Continental Free Trade Area in operation.
Well, basically, it's an agenda by African Union heads of state and government. They decided to establish an African Continental Free Trade Area in 2012, well before the incumbent administration in government, before President Buhari's government. But the mandate that we have from President Buhari is his total and complete priority, as he has established it for us, is jobs, jobs, and jobs for Nigerians. Secondly, enlarge market access for Nigerian exporters of goods and services. Thirdly, make sure that in the negotiations you create appropriate safeguards for the Nigerian economy to prevent some of the things that you see, transshipment, dumping, unfair trading practices against Nigeria, the piracy of Nigeria's intellectual property rights, and an agreement that would foster innovation enterprise. So overall, the President's mandate to us in the negotiating team was abundantly clear. Our population is increasing. We need to deepen growth, the quality of growth. We need to modernize the Nigerian economy. Clearly, as he put it to us on the 23rd of February last year in a memo to the office, his points were clear. This economy must be modernized. We must increase welfare. We have to deepen and foster the quality of growth. Whatever it is that you're negotiating, make sure that this is done. And this is what we've tried to do in a dual capacity. Nigeria is acting in a dual capacity in the negotiations. One, we chair it at the African Union level. And secondly, we're also protecting and advancing our own national and commercial interests.
Those are objectives. How will it work once the agreement is once the agreement comes into force?
Well, the way it would operate is in terms of the provisions, in terms of the rules that would govern intra-African trade. Basically, any preference that one African country that is a state party to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, any preference, trade concession that you give to one African country, you would unconditionally give it to other African countries. And so this is how it would operate domestically within Nigeria. What we're concerned is to be able to, be sure that in the implementation of the agreement, that there is a lock, an interlock with Nigeria's industrial policy. In other words, that the priorities, very specific, that have been identified in the Nigerian Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council that was established by the FEC in March of last year, that the priorities in their regard to sectoral priorities, industrial policy priorities, that they are reflected in the implementation of the agreement. Thirdly, we have a lot of work to do still with trade infrastructure. We have to scale up trade infrastructure so that we are able to maximize the opportunities that would eventuate from the agreement. The other thing that is absolutely critical, Kingsley, is, and we haven't done enough of this, and I have to say this upfront, we have to deepen our consultations with the stakeholders in the Nigerian economy, the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. So in terms of actual operation and functioning, we have to scale up and deepen our efforts at stakeholder engagement and communicating what we are doing better.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chiedu Sakwi. Let's get the views now of Ken Okohar. For a lot of people, this is welcome, this is lovely. But the question on the minds of a lot of people, if this trade agreement is to benefit Africans or be done within the African continent, not forgetting that a lot of economies in Africa are largely tied to economies outside the continent, if not exclusively, largely dependent on economies that are outside the continent.
Well, thank you very much, Rhoda. First, let me start with saying that the CFTA is a good thing for Africa and Africans. It adds value to Agenda 2025 and Agenda 2063, and moving us towards a regional entity where there will be shared distribution of wealth, where the objective of poverty reduction will be classified among the characters that own the entity called Africa. Now, I think the problems, and I'm happy that Dr. Sakwe has mentioned one, which is the process. The process. I'm so happy. First, we are happy also that one of us is heading the negotiations. I am aware of the battles that went in, and then eventually he became the lead negotiator at the African Union, But I think that my concern, as well as concerns of all the Nigerians, include one, what are the contents of the CFTA? Two, where does Nigeria locate herself? Three, what are the benefits to Nigerians? Four, what are the clear gains to the Nigerian economy and our livelihoods? Now, if you contextualize all of this, you must also juxtapose these four questions within the context of the objectives of the CFTA itself. Number 5 is, are there enough protection for the people that these agreements are meant for? Now, in terms of process, and I think I would need to talk a little there, something that is commendable is that the Office of the Trade Negotiations, NOTN, set up a committee. Yours sincerely, I was a member. I mean, I've been a member. And there are regular briefings. But to the extent that the technicalities involved are not well disseminated, and that's the problem we're having right now. There has not been enough forum to dismantle. Trade is highly technical. To dismantle, what are the logics? What are those jargons in trade? What are the contents? Number 2 is that we don't even have, perhaps because of lack of funds, we don't even have opportunities for studies, analysis that would have led to the conclusions. Number 3, for me, is that it appears all of these were carried out in a jiffy, to the point that everybody woke up and said, and that's why you hear NLC now coming up to say, now so the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they've written to the president and say, don't assent yet. And if you ask me, even though I'm a member of the negotiation team, I said yes, they have a right. It is very clear. Because negotiations, even in the United States and other, developed economies, negotiations are concluded based on the contents given by the private sector, because the government is not the one that is implementing. It is meant for the private sector. And therefore, the business community would need to understand the underlying factors. In fact, they need to arm you with what you need to negotiate with, the positions. Finally, let me come to close this particular introductory remarks with what I call putting the cart before the horse. Charity, they say, begins at home. I have been crying over the roof. We do not have a trade policy. Is here. The last trade policy we have in Nigeria is in 2001, 2002. The WTO has been, crying over this matter. Every 5 years, the WTO reviews every country's trade policy. You don't have a written document called trade policy. Now, the question would now be, how did you get your positions for negotiation out of Africa?
Colonel Koha, thank you very much. Ambassador Chiedo Sakwe, the number of posers that Colonel Koha has raised, so I'll just ask you simply to respond to them.
Well, Kingsley, the points that have been raised by Barrister Koha are valid points and valid concerns. There's absolutely no point in being foolishly defensive about it. And what we have done so far since the 10th of May, when the Federal Executive Council decided to establish the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, have been to respond to these issues. It's work in progress. We have not completely solved all the problems, but these are valid concerns. To take up the issue of process on the negotiations, what we have currently with regard to the agreement that would establish the African Continental Free Trade Area is the framework agreement that sets out the general principles, sets out the provisions in terms of process. That is what will be signed in Kigali at the Extraordinary Summit on the 21st of March. Thereafter, what would follow would be the built-in agenda, which responds to what my brother and friend Ken Okoha is speaking about. This will now relate post 21st of March to the establishment of the actual modalities on the basis of which tariff bindings, tariff reductions, the exclusion list, the sensitive list, the priority areas for both goods negotiations, the goods schedules and the services schedule would be specifically, technically, and precisely defined. That is the stage, in other words, post 21st of March, when we would take our consultations, for example, with the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria to the next level. Already yesterday, I can confirm to you, we have received very specific recommendations from the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria regarding areas where men would like to have policy and industrial space, and that shall be taken into account. And I will reconfirm that to them at 9:30 this morning at a stakeholders meeting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So that stage of the technical engagement of the stakeholders, in other words, our manufacturers of goods and our providers of services, will take place in the context of the African Union and for Nigeria post 21st of March. So no harm has been done. The second point Barrister Okoha raises correctly is about the esoteric nature of trade negotiations. It's very cerebral. There's a lot of jargon in it. It's very technical. So we have to do a better job of simplification. This has not been an area where Nigerians, the policy community, has played in any manner. And I'm glad, much appreciation to the Nigerian Television Authority for giving us a podium on this. My appeal to you is, please, for goodness sake, create more opportunities for engagement and policy discourse beyond populism, beyond the blowback rhetorical against globalization. Create opportunities like this for a better granular discussion on issues that are attendant and associated with the technicalities.
Explain for the benefit of our viewers. You said that what will be signed next week in Kigali is the framework agreement.
Correct.
Now, what are the fundamentals of accession to the framework? Is it that if you accede to the framework, you can't resile out of it? In other words, do you get bound by the framework going forward?
Well, those who enter into a negotiation do so on the basis of good faith, that if you enter into a negotiation, you will be bound by what you are committed to. But specifically, since you ask, in Article 28, and that's very specific, of the Protocol on Trade in Goods, one of the 3 protocols to the framework agreement that would establish the African Continental Free Trade Area, there is, quote, a withdrawal clause for any state party that would like to withdraw thereafter. Second, specifically with regard to that, there are review clauses in the protocols, 3 of them. There's a review clause in the framework agreement, and so there would be both a macro and a micro cycle of reviews in the framework agreement that we're signing. One of the things I wanted to talk about, Kingsley and Rhoda, I think it's important, is the absence of a trade policy. The last Nigerian trade policy, and Barrister Okoha is right, was written in 2002. Frankly, it's a scandal that between 2002 and up until President Buhari's government, there has been no trade policy. But President Buhari is working to remedy this. This is why the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations was established. This is why we stand, as the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, we stand under the advisement on a constant basis of His Excellency, our Vice President, in Professor Yemi Osinbajo, in the economic management team. He keeps an eye on this. And Kingsley, one other thing, 2 weeks ago, for the first time, it's a first, the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, on the authority of the President, launched the first ever edition of the Nigerian Annual Trade Policy Report. It's never happened. So 2 weeks ago, a first annual trade policy report for Nigeria was launched, and in June we would have an update of the 2002 trade policy.
I'm wondering, Ambassador Chiedo Osakwe, thanks a lot for your reaction. Ken Okoha, and then of course you gentlemen, obviously we are still taking our baby steps with regard to trade policy. We also know the depth of our industrialization. Yes, you can have an industrial policy, but how deep is your industrialization? Indeed, how solid is the economy? If our metrics are still shaky, as it were, why are we getting headlong into negotiations of this nature? What are we bringing to the table, Ken Okoha?
Frankly speaking, this would have been no cause for alarm, in quotes, if we had gotten our acts together. Now, the point I am making is this. Before you negotiate, you should have a trade policy that pulls out the objectives of your negotiation. That's one. Because you cannot negotiate outside
your policy,
the presence of your policy. Now, it gives you the latitude. It also gives you, the specific areas to navigate in the negotiations. The second point is that, whereas you don't have this, you must also conduct several studies and analysis on the thematic issues of the negotiations. And, Kingsley, all of these are lacking. One is that you don't blame the man who is negotiating for you. But the Nigerian government has been so, I'm sorry to use this word, like passive over the negotiations. And bring out funds.
We're rushing to sign.
And now you are rushing to sign. What are you going to sign? The funds for the negotiation, you won't bring out for, to help those who are negotiating, to conduct analysis that are very, very key, monumental. You talked about trade policy. You talked about industrial policy. These two collapse to give you the particular areas that you have competitive advantage. And this is where you now pick up and negotiate on. And then the trade-offs there are also given to you through that particular.
A couple of points. I may have to deviate with a good patriot like Ken. One, we had and we have key priorities that were established by President Buhari for the negotiations. Secondly, studies were conducted based on the most recent study that was circulated about 2 weeks ago. Nigeria stands to gain no less than $2.68 billion in terms of the welfare estimates that have been modeled from the AFCFTA. Thirdly, as I said, there was a six-pointed set of priorities that were identified by the President.
All right, thank you very much, Ambassador Chinedu Osakwe, Director General and the Chief Negotiator, Nigerian Office of Trade Negotiations, and the Chairman of the Negotiating Forum for the Continental Free Trade Area, CFTA. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And also a very big thank you to Ken Okoha. He's the National President, Association of Nigerian Traders. Well, that's the much we can take on this discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. And of course, our third item for discussion this morning is the just suspended SANU strike. Well, the Joint Action Committee on the National Association of Academic Technologists, NAT, and Academic Staff Union, NASU, and Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, has suspended its 3 months industrial strike. To this end, the committee has directed members of the affected unions to resume work. But we'll be having a guest very shortly who will be speaking to this. But let's take this report put together by Manuel Ayimiro to give us more understanding.
unions to accept the Memorandum of Understanding signed with the government last week, the Joint Action Committee of NAT, NASU and SANU announced the suspension of the strike. The workers are optimistic that some of their demands are going to be met by the government.
The understanding that was reached gave a 5-week period for implementation of payment of a fraction of the arrears owed on earned allowances to our members, and also report progress made in respect of countries 14 and 15 for technologies. Similarly, the issue of staff school is to be taken up by the Federal Ministry of Education with the National Salary Incomes and Wages Commission. We have therefore directed our members to resume work Thursday, 15th March 2018.
All right, we are having with us right now in the studios the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, that's Dr. Senator Chris Ngige. Dr. Ngige, pleasure to have you with us. Good morning, Nigeria.
Thank you, Kinsley.
Yes. Until about 48 hours or so ago, it seemed as if the Nigerians had forgotten about a strike that had been on for well over 3 months. That's the strike by the non-academic staff unions of the universities and research institutes. So, how did you break the ice?
Well, you see, industrial relations is a very tricky environment. This strike wouldn't have lasted more than 2 weeks if both the joint unions and the Ministry of Education, who is the apparent employer, they had done the right industrial arbitration steps. We had conciliated that matter in September of 2017 and reached an agreement. What are the agreements? The agreement was that the main thrust of their strike at that time was payment of end allowances. And we made it clear to them that the end allowances were approved for ASU, which is Academic Staff Union of Universities, which they dubbed, that's ASU, called their own, and academic allowances, EAA. On the side of these joint unions, of non-academic staff unions, and the technologists in the universities and the senior staff, we said, your own is end allowances. But it's a total comprehensive government package over end allowances. So if you're non-academic, your own end allowance is there. If you're academic and you call your own end academic allowance, yours also is in that basket. And what the basket? 23 billion. That's what government was able to get out. But they were saying, oh, you compartmentalize it for us. We say we can't. This money that have been taken out from export in the academic threshold. So NASU themselves, this joint union of 3, it took them up to 2 weeks after the negotiation to get back to the universities and do their template for assessing that fund. ASU was wise at this time because in 2012 they were insisting on doing long consultations with their different unions and branches and voting. And these 3 unions went back to the universities, called off their strike, and assessed the fund that was made available at that time. I think it's about 30 billion. So that is what happened this time. I kept on appealing to Jack, go back, bring your template and give to education and the Accountant General's office so that you people will be on good stead in taking from this same pot. They didn't. So by the time they came, ASU had taken nearly 80% of the money. Okay. That's the problem. So instead of reverting back to us, who are the conciliators and who by law we are the arbitrators in dispute, they went back to education and started doing some rigmarole at education. We called them for a meeting. They refused to come. Education themselves say, oh, we are handling it in-house. These are our direct employers. It took my reporting at council for everybody to sit up. So I called them back. And within 2 weeks that they came back, we resolved everything because these are negotiations, agreements. That's what it is, social dialogue. That's what is called in international dispute resolution by the ILO. They are the social partners. The social partners are government on one side, as an employer in the public service sector, private sector employers, called Employers Association, and then the workers themselves, workers organization, called the union. So we talked, we had only 3 sessions, and we broke the ice and put our signatures on an agreement last Friday. I have a way of doing my arbitration with timelines so that government themselves can sit up and honor.
That's where I was going to take you to now, because there's always this thought on the minds of people that when agreements like this are reached, at the end of the day, government doesn't come to play its own part or doesn't place, you know, part of
not this change government of Buhari. We are bringing something new. I came there. I'm not a trade dispute man. I'm not a unionist. Even though I have unionist blood in me too, but I'm not a practicing one. So what I have done in all my negotiation is to make sure that my negotiations have timelines. Government must keep to their own side of the bargain. An agreement is an agreement. It's a CBA, collective bargaining. And why do you... So I have, like this one now, I have fixed a timeline of 5 weeks for us to implement. So I have put a meeting back for 5 weeks. 5 weeks, we all come back, put the agreement on the table, and tick those that have been done. Those have not been done. The relevant government agencies, if it's Office of Head of Service, you tell us why you have not done so. What are your problems? If it is finance, they're always short of money. They will tell us what their problem is, and we will talk to the Minister of Finance. And what is above her, she can send to the Mr. President for approval. That's how I've been operating here. So I'm happy they've called off yesterday as promised in the agreement. And I've also told them they have to go and cover lost ground because a lot of services in the universities have gone bad.
That's right.
The waterworks, they went and locked up waterworks. In some places, Genset House, they went and blocked it. The accounts department stopped. So we couldn't do even what is called the auditing of the former money that have been given to them, because that is also one of the conditionalities. We have to audit these monies you are taking away. It's not free money.
All right. Honorable Minister, of course, end allowances, they said, was only one of a raft of issues that triggered the strike. There are others. But we're pressed for time. I would like you to speak to this, because it's been of concern to stakeholders in tertiary education in Nigeria. You've talked now about the agreements reached, and then the monies, of course, to be paid, and how government will meet its own obligation.
Yes.
Who has reached this agreement? Because one of the most confusing things, you know, in industrial relations in Nigeria is the fact that the federal government, which is the owner of federal universities, will reach its own agreement, and then state governments, which own state universities, are not part of the agreement. And when ASU, in this case, non-academic staff, when NASU goes on strike with federal universities, all state universities, or most of them, will also join in the strike. So who has done, who's negotiated now, and who is on board?
Well, the truth of the matter is that industrial relations negotiations, issues of trade unions, issues of industrial disputes, issues of national minimum wage for the entire country or any part thereof, is in the exclusive legislative list, item 34, in the second schedule. That's where it is for today. Unless the Nigerian Constitution 1999 is amended, that's where it is. So when we negotiate, I'm the chief negotiator. I'm the chief conciliator for the Federation. And I cannot do it alone. I have my professionals who give me technical advice. And then I bring the relevant organs of government that is affected. There is no negotiation I will do over money that I don't bring in the finance ministry and the accountant general's office. They are the treasurers. They have the purse.
They have the purse of the, is it of the federation or the purse of the federal government?
They have the purse of the federal government, but I have started by telling you that issues on this are in the exclusive legislative list. Okay. If issues concern state governments, I bring them. Malam El-Rufai, my very good friend, when it was the Kaduna issue, I summoned Kaduna state government and they came in obedience to the law of the land. The constitution is supreme. When it was Kogi State, I summoned them. Kogi State University, and they came.
Honorable Minister, we don't have enough time because our time is limited. It's a matter that we have to get back into.
Yes, I agree with you.
If you say funds have been made available, is it the federal government that is also making funds available to state governments to pay members of the non-academic staff union?
No, we can't do so because the universities there are their own, so to say, private universities.
All right.
It's exclusive to them.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige.
Maybe I'll come again. I'll take a full session with Kinsley.
All right. You're welcome anytime.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for joining us this morning.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Time now for us to quickly take a look at the weather prospect for the rest of today. And that's it on Good Morning Nigeria today. We thank you so much for your time this morning. We'll be back again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. God willing. I'm Rhoda Anonam.
And I'm Kingsley Osadola. I join Rhoda in thanking you for being on the program with us today and indeed for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day.